Hello, Black Eagles. Welcome back to the Black Eagles podcast. I'm joined again today by Ural to talk about yesterday's press conference from the Beşiktaş president Serdal Adalı, who addressed a lot of the points concerning the upcoming member vote on essentially giving this board, the current board, carte blanche, which means that they will have unlimited power, to put it in Star Wars Emperor Palpatine terms. Ural, coming out of this press conference yesterday and mainly the Q&A afterwards, I thought that was the most noteworthy part of it all. Are some of your concerns addressed? Do you feel a little bit better about a potential yes vote on the upcoming membership Congress vote?
Well, there was more information, so that was good.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it doesn't mean that my vote changed.
Yeah.
In that sense, I'm not a member, so I cannot vote. But I would still not, if this text will remain unchanged.
Yeah.
This information is not enough to. Well, it's also beside the information, because I think still the article needs to change, so the text needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why my vote would still be no at the moment.
Yeah, he did,
even based on this information.
Yeah, he did say that this power, or this, how should I put it? This
authority that he's asking.
This essentially complete authority that he is asking for, that it would not continue over into the next term if a new board were to be appointed. I don't know whether it would carry over into a next term if he were to be the president still, but he did mention several times that it wouldn't carry over automatically to boards in the future. That was one of your major concerns as well, I think.
Correct.
So,
but if I can react to that, so mm-hmm. because you touch upon a very crucial point.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then why it's just one word?
Mm-hmm.
Why not add that word to the text?
Yeah, exactly.
So say in the text this board, or even better, make it this. What is it? The 48th or the 47th board or president?
Yeah.
Then why not specify it, so that we don't have any discussion or doubt about if this could carry over, or what happens if other continues or not, or right?
Yeah.
It's just one word that we need, or to get this question marks out of our heads,
or even put like a date on it, right? Like put like a until the end of this term or something. For example, he has a 3-year term now, so put an exact date on it, for example, and add some wording where until the end of the current board's term or until its resignation, something like that, right?
That would make it ironclad. So
yeah,
and he's you're right. He addressed it, and so regardless of the intentions. Last time we said it's not about the person. It's not about his intentions. It's about doing the thing, the correct thing, and be legally right. Do a professional thing.
Yeah.
So if this is the case, then it would also be not a problem to change the wording to make it ironclad,
mm-hmm.
With a date, with pointing really out this board. Then there's no problem on that part.
Yeah. And I mean, the fact that he had to address it also signifies that multiple people took issue with it and that the wording was lacking. And just why is it so difficult to write out a proper press communique where these sort of details are covered? I understand that you can't cover all the details, in great detail or something like that. But this feels like a very significant part of the upcoming vote, and it should be clarified, and people deserve to know that this is only for his term or for a certain amount of time or something like that, And I do, but not to jump from one point to the other, but another point that you brought up was the ability to loan or rent out property owned by the club for longer periods than 10 years, because right now it's capped off at 10 years. He did talk about why he wanted that. I think he talked about that a certain major hotel chain were interested in opening a hotel in the Akatlar.
Akaretler. So Beşiktaş Plaza.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
Plaza.
They wanted to open a hotel there, and in order to do so, they wanted to sign a long-term contract, because they were going to obviously invest heavily in that real estate. That was obviously something like that is going to cost probably millions. So I do understand, if you give a little bit more context to it, why he would want that. He also mentioned it would be a very beneficial deal to the club. There would be, a significant amount of money involved, plus a certain amount of the profits or something. I'm not sure. And I do believe that the hotel chain would carry the costs of the renovations or the building or whatever it would be. So that does shine a little bit more light on that. How do you feel about that now? Do you think that that's something, again, there should be more detail over it? Like, for example, they could ask permission for specifically that project, rather than just have carte blanche for all properties owned by the club for going forward.
Yeah. So let me give some detail on the deal, because again, by words he's saying it's only about this, about Beşiktaş Plaza. So I think the theme of the day is, if that's the case, you're acting in good faith, etc. Why not put it in writing? Change the amend the articles so that there's no doubt about what kind of authority you're asking. So that's sort of an ongoing theme for all the articles, and we have addressed that now, so that's clear, right? There needs to be an amendment to the text to have no discussion and no debate, because he also doesn't like the debate, he indicated. So to clear that, it's very simple. Then if you look at the deal itself, so should we sort of agree to this or not? Why are you going over this 10-year term? I think the information he gave makes sense, right? Because that building is empty now for 2.5 years. It's one of the towers that we have in Fulya. It's empty because it's not earthquake proof. So under Hasan Arat, they already asked the municipality, we want to make this earthquake proof. Can we get the permits, etc., so that we can continue to rent it out, because it's empty now at the moment. We're losing money. There's no income from it.
Yes.
And on that basis, this hotel chain, I don't know which one it is, they said, okay, you know what? Let us do the renovation works to make it earthquake proof. We'll do the full refurbishment in our style, or the way that we want to have this hotel. But in exchange for that investment, we at least need 15 or 20 years contract, right?
Yeah.
So that their business case works out. In exchange, we'll give you 3.5 million euros in rent, plus you'll be a 50-50 partner, basically, in the proceeds, or in the profit that we make from this hotel. So if you look at those numbers, it's an incredibly good deal, I would say.
Yeah.
I don't know if that rent sort of is currently market price, but let's assume it's market price.
But is that 3.5 million? Is that annual? Is that over the entire term of the contract?
No, I think it's annual.
Okay.
My perception was it was annual.
Okay, that's a lot of money then. Yeah.
Yeah, because what I understood is that at the moment, if it's not a hotel and you rent it out as units, the total income is 1.5 million euros a year. So you go up from 1.5 to 3.5 if you do this hotel deal.
Yeah.
So even if we would invest our own money, refurbish it and rent it out, the proceeds would be 1.5, maybe 2 million euros.
Yeah.
So you gain an extra 1.5 million plus the profit share you have with the hotel.
You gain
so in itself,
you gain more than 2 million, because you don't have to do the investment plus the difference between,
Correct.
Yeah, so you gain a lot of money.
Yeah. So in itself, it sounds like a really good deal, and it's pretty amazing deal. And then I understand, like you said, the 50-year or the 20-year tenure that you need.
Yeah, or 25
to sign.
Yeah,
right?
of course. I mean, but then it all comes back to just include that information already, because like you haven't earned blind trust from anyone, and that's not a personal thing, but your predecessors, Hassan Arad, Ahmed Nourchebi, Fikret Orman, maybe less so, but Yildirim Demirören, Serdar Bilgili. There's been a lot of stuff happened over the last 20 odd years since Süleyman Seba stepped down as president, and there's no reason to just trust any president at this point unless they have proven themselves. And Serdal Adalı is still very much unproven.
And mind you, he was vice president under Demirören.
Yeah.
So he was there when things happened. He was not there the full term of Demirören, but he was there when things happened, and he was there in other presidencies as well. So he's also not completely with all of his real estate experience, etc., also Fulya happened. So, I'm not blaming him.
Yes, but I think the Fulya contracts were signed already. He became vice president in 2010. I think all that stuff was already long outside of his control, so not to defend.
Yeah, but but I'm also not blaming him, but it's not that he's completely new stepping into the organization and not knowing how difficult, how we have sort of we burnt our hands. So that's what the community or the Beşiktaş fans feel. We've burned our hands once. We don't want to burn our hands twice. And he should know this. And again, making an amendment to the text, but also why not add an addendum detailing all of this information and saying, okay, this is what we want. These are the authorities on the basis of this addendum, meaning a lot more details in text, etc., because the articles they need to be short, etc. So that's workable. That's all fine. But then refer to the addendum and say, okay, this is detailing out basically the deals that we want the authority for, which is, I think, completely feasible and workable. And then I don't think you would have this much discussion on the votes, because the information that he shared, actually, I was surprised. There was quite some information. I was afraid that he was going to say, it's all in NDA, I cannot share this information yet. But he shared quite openly a lot of information. So then there's also no problem to put that into an addendum and present it in time to all the members, instead of what he wants to do now. On the 15th, he wants to detail the articles and discuss the articles or explain the articles further. And then I think on the 22nd, it will be the real vote. But why? He's shooting himself in the foot. So why haven't you done this?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, right? Before you sort of created this
it's
chaos.
Yeah. Again. He needs some of our friends in the community group chat the other day as well. They said this guy needs media training. Like some of the things he says, and just I feel like there's a lot of good ideas there for sure. And even when you hear him talk about the whole Dikilitaj project. Obviously, it sounds very good on paper, but we've heard those fairy tales before, of course. But I do think that some people are getting the impression that he's just trying stuff after stuff after stuff. I do think he had a bunch of things lined, ideas, but it's not concrete yet necessarily. Or I feel like you should be further along in some of these things already, and I understand that for example, Dikilitaj, it's a difficult case because he can't do it right now. He needs extra territory or extra
plots of land.
Plots of land from the municipality. So he mentioned as well that they have a plot of land in Ankara that they want to exchange with the municipality. But then I find this wording really weird. He's, then he puts it in a scenario of, we'll go to the municipality and we'll say, here, you can have our plot of land in Ankara in exchange for this extra territory in Dikilitaj so we can do our project. But then I wonder to myself, when he says stuff like that, I wonder, okay, is that what you're going to do? Or have you already done that? Have you taken the first steps already, spoken to the people from the municipality, and have they given you essentially the green light, and all you need is now to get this vote so you can actually sign off on this officially? That's what I want to know, because right now to me it just sounds like a lot of ideas he's putting out there, but how far along is he? Does he already have an agreement with the municipality or not? In principle, you know what I mean? Like just things like that.
So I think the whole big question is basically as follows. So he has a protocol, so a principal understanding with Emla Connaught, who's going to do the whole project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Their share will be 8% of the proceeds.
Yeah.
So that's one element. Second is we have a 15,000 square meter plot, which is around Fulia, and then he wants to make that 20,000 square meters, and there's a possibility there.
Yeah.
So adding the extra 5,000 comes from 2 plots of land from the government actually, because that's sporting ground, and you cannot change the zone planning.
The zoning.
So the zoning. So the reason why Emla Connaught is involved is because apparently they're the only one. If they're involved, they can change the zoning. Don't ask me why or how, but that's the reason. He said this is the reason why we can only do this with Emla Connaught, because only they will be able to change the zoning, because you cannot easily change sort of a sports ground zone for to build.
Do they have
build houses?
Do they have connections to? Are they like Turkey government related? Yeah.
They're owned by for 50% or 49%. They're owned by.
Yeah. Okay, so that
and the rest is
that
probably,
explains why they can get that done then.
I don't know. I don't want to go there.
But
this is his reasoning.
But also that would make you think if they're in bed with Emla Connaught, then you would imagine, okay, then getting the land from the municipality should be easy, right?
Yeah, it's the ministry, but no, you're absolutely right.
But...
So what they said, I think so. Apparently, they already have an agreement saying, okay, they're interested to do it, to give those 2 plots of land, so that there's a total built. So there's a total area of 20,000 square meters, which then can be developed into 40,000. I made a calculation based on 80,000, but I guess it depends on the height of the buildings that you can put there, etc., etc. Yeah. He said it will be 40,000 square meters for now, roughly.
Yeah.
So there's now sort of a two options with the government, which is basically either we exchange a plot of land, being the one in Ankara. That's what he said. I propose the one that. Because in Ankara we cannot do anything with it. Yeah. It's not interesting for Beşiktaş as a club, okay? But we can exchange it for this. Or, he said, we'll get a valuation on those plots and we buy those plots from the government. That's what those 2 options are right now. And apparently, according to him, there's no decision yet on which one of the 2. It depends. He said if we can buy it, and sort of the price okay, we'll buy it. If not, we can exchange this plot in Ankara, which was gifted, I believe, to Beşiktaş like in the past.
Yeah. Under Süleyman Seba, he mentioned, I believe. I think he said that our great president Süleyman Seba got this land for the club or something like that.
Of course, he's the only one that has
done anything. Yeah, very true. I wonder what plot of land that is we have in Ankara. I mean, it could also be of high value, of course. And that also
according to him, he said he cannot use it as a training ground. Or he said we cannot develop really something there. But
we don't really have any use for it, right? Or I mean, you would have what you could do, for example, is they could go and they could start a youth academy in Ankara because it's more centralized. It's easier to attract talent from all over the country there, but obviously that would be a big investment and. Right now the club is not in a position to do those things. We need, so it makes sense, of course. So what do you think of his valuation of now he was talking about 400 million. Before he was talking about 200 million for the club. Now he was talking about 400 million. It's like he listened to our podcast and he listened to Ural Alhan say, why not 300? Why not 400 million? Now he was saying 400. What do you think of that?
And that's where I lost, to be honest. I lost him, or he lost me a bit, because he's also not very clear in his statements. So his text to me is not very clear. So I didn't. So he started about Ziraat Bank. He wanted to involve Ziraat Bank, the real estate branch of Ziraat Bank, and he said, well, let's offer you a piece of the pie, 10% plus write off our debt for 20%, or we can do something else. But in total, we will not give more. We will not give more than 40% of the total value of the property.
The project, yeah.
Yeah, the project. But then also he said we will. So whatever is assigned to us, what our share is, that we will sell up until 125 million, which is repayment of the banking debt.
But
and then the rest will be kept as property or as assets.
But Ural, if we're giving 10% to Ziraat Bank, aren't we already giving them that to get out from under the loan? Isn't that the point?
No, yeah, no, and that's a little bit the thing. It's not. They involve Ziraat to sort of also help with selling the finished product, so to say. Help there, but also invest. So also sort of the construction investment, etc., etc. Because Emlak will carry it, and they said if we get Ziraat on board, they will also have to put in their weight with regards to sort of the construction costs, etc., etc. Because there are two, and that's why this has become so difficult. There are two options: either Emlak asks a construction company, "Can you build this for us?" and name your price, and they will do a tender. And then Emlak will carry sort of the full construction cost, etc.
But only for 8%. That seems weird, right?
Yeah, so that's why I also have some question marks, and that was not very much detailed. And then the second option would be to have sort of a profit share and a cost share with everybody involved, including the constructor.
But
and
not
also
Beşiktaş,
that choice.
Right?
We put in the plot.
We put in the plot, exactly. Yeah. So Beşiktaş would not have to invest in the construction or anything.
No, and his reasoning for putting in Ziraat is one, to get sort of professionals on board, help with the marketing, selling, etc., put in some construction costs, but then also tying it to write off some debt, so lower our debt with sort of the value that you're getting out of there.
But with
that he's still negotiating that.
And would that only cover the bank union debt, or would that cover other debt? Because obviously the club has way more debt. But the club has, how much is it? 14 billion lira debt, I think.
Yeah, it's almost 15.
Yeah, almost 15 billion, and
it's reduced now with 30 million, of course, at the banking debt.
Yeah, 35, I think he mentioned. So, but that's our total debt to the bank union was 4.2 million lira, and it has been reduced billion. Sorry, and it has been reduced by 1.4. So we still have 2.8. Let's call it 3. We still have 3 billion lira debt left with the bank union, but that leaves another 11 billion debt that we still have. So, so I'm curious when he's talking about these things, like, okay, are we going to get rid of more debt, not just the bank union debt, because we still have other, debt as well that we need to try and clear, and obviously not as pressing, I guess.
No, tax debt. I think there's like 50 million tax debt. Yeah. But so there's serious amounts still owed, but he only talked about we're gonna sell up until 125 million.
Yeah.
So you make the calculation, right? So of course we reduced it with 30 million, the capital sum of the banking union. So there is some leeway for other debts, but it doesn't cover everything, of course. But that would entail selling everything in that project that's assigned to us. To sort of repay it, and he said, "Well, no, we're going to do it up until 125 million, and the rest of the assets we will keep to rent out, etc., etc." And also that makes sense, because otherwise, so as to sort of have an ongoing cash flow from this, it makes sense to just keep the properties and not sell it all, right? That I would want to believe so.
Yeah, I agree. It makes more sense.
But there are some elements missing which I cannot follow on the basis of his speech. So I don't know. It's not very. That part is not very clear to me. So how it really will work out, all the numbers, etc.
Yeah, obviously that's. I mean, you can't really. I guess you can't really expect him to go into really big detail on that yet, especially if the contracts aren't signed yet. 8% can become 12%. 10% can become 8, and 20% can become 30. I mean, at the end of the day, there's still a lot there to he can't really go into details yet. When it's not yet been decided. But it does sound like a potential lifesaver for Beşiktaş, a potential lifeline. And he is deliberately, of course, trying to put it like that. He is very much creating a little bit of a sense of dread, but are we being a little too hard on him by saying that? Because does the club really have any other options at this point than doing this, right?
Well, actually, there was one of the questions that I also wanted to ask you, because the thing is, this man is elected, and he's been elected twice.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the choice that the club or the members of the club made.
Yeah.
And that means we already knew his profile, and in that sense, his constraints, right?
Mm-hmm.
His plans were always reset based. Maybe not this project per se, but we all understood, if you know his profile, he would always seek it in the real estate part of the club, or that's sort of his expertise, right? So he would not come up with some sort of a genius other idea to generate money. No. That's not his profile, and we've elected him. So in that sense, we're also stuck with him, and then you need to give him the benefit of the doubt, I guess, to sort of live up to his promises.
Yeah.
And
you have to enable him to do it. You can't hand it. It's not like for example in America, where if a president wins but then he doesn't have the Senate, so he can't really get anything done. Like, what's the point then of electing that person as a president, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But let's do it under the right condition, the right terms. Yeah. So I'm not against that project. I think the Dignitas project is something. You know what? It's now a training ground, and it's sort of it's useful for the club, but not as useful as sort of selling it, being able to generate an income of 200 million.
No, and they have if they have Pashamandra is it Pashamandra, or am I confusing the Fenerbahce thing again? That's not.
No, Pashamandra is on the Asian side, sort of the to-be training ground.
Yeah, they could they can create a training ground there. So I mean, you don't need it in Dignitas, right, or in Fulya or whatever.
Not per se. Yeah. So you lose a little bit of you don't have much left in sort of that community anymore. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, that's a choice that you can.
You have the presence of all the property you own there. So there's still I mean you can.
No, but I mean like with Sporting and you have still stay. You still have Akatlar, of course, but so that's a choice, right? So I'm not against the project in itself, because I think it's a good opportunity, especially if he says we couldn't do anything with it because Fikret Orman also tried, but now with Emrah Konut we see the possibility to change the zoning, thus we can add another 5,000, and then we can have a really nice project. Then I'm not against it, and then let's do it under the right conditions, like I said again, and under the right wording. Then he would have my blessing. Then go for it, right? Yeah. Then show what you can do, and gain something for the club. So to come back to your, I don't think we're harsh in the sense that, again, I think most people are not against the project per se, but the way that he's doing it is not the right way, in my opinion. Yeah. He needs to really get a press agent or somebody that sort of guides him with this, because I don't doubt his intentions, to be honest, but the way that he's presenting this and doing this, it's just unnecessary discussion and debate.
I feel the same way. I mean, we were talking about this the other day again in our WhatsApp community group. Shout out to all the guys in the community and the girls. I don't know if there's any girls there, but shout out to all the people there. I don't want to discriminate. So if you want to join that, feel free to join us on Patreon or on YouTube. By becoming a member, and you can join our WhatsApp community. It's great there, and maybe one day you can be on the show, just like Ural, right?
Exactly. You never know.
If you have
your expertise,
if you have something exactly, if you have a field of expertise and you have something to add, like Ural, all this information, the way you find it out and all that kind of stuff, I think it's invaluable. Or is that the right way to say it? It's very valuable to the community, I think, and hopefully people can get something out of it. I already had some comments from people saying it's really, it was depressing, our previous video, but very informative and stuff they didn't know. And you're able to explain it in such a way, that even a layman can understand it, like myself. because you have the background in financial world. I believe you have a legal background as well, right? And so that's a lot more than a lot of us do.
happy to hear, and happy to, because it's also it's interesting to discuss, of course, because with Beşiktaş not everything is football, unfortunately. But it's also good to discuss this and to understand what's really happening, because it also impacts the football side.
Yeah,
right? Being able to get transfers is really dependent on this, right?
Yes, and then also for the long term of the club, I think we were talking about Hüseyin Yücel's plans to clear the debt, but I think Yücel's, I like Yücel's plans because maybe we would have been out of this debt already, but long term for the club, Yücel also was thinking of doing some stuff with real estate, but there wasn't anything concrete there, I think. So long term for the club, if this can work out, the Dikilitaj project, this could be what we hoped Fulya would have been, 15 plus years ago. Because I remember, this was in the mid 2000s, I think, when they were talking about Fulya. This is going to, bring in so much money for the club. I think they were also talking a couple of 100 million back then, but which was a lot more back then than it is now, of course. I remember, the feeling there was this is going to establish Beşiktaş, and this is going to propel the club into being able to compete in Europe. Not, of course, for the Champions League, perhaps, but becoming a solid sub-top European giant, like a Porto, for example. And Fulya obviously was a massive disappointment. Never panned out what it was going to be. It was going to be the future of the club, and it never panned out to that. Dikilitaj, the way it's being sold to us now, it could be first and foremost the saving grace for the club, but also create a revenue stream that will enable the club in the future to be more financially self-sufficient, and hopefully one day completely self-sufficient.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely right. I think for the long term, these projects are necessary, but also I think a good plan on how to spend it, because if you can spend this all in one window, right?
Yeah, of course.
So and then you sort of not completely, but then you always spend sort of half your asset in that sense.
Yeah,
so,
and that makes your point from earlier important as well. It's much better, I think, that we keep the property so we have a constant revenue stream. Instead of say you get 100, 200 million, because 100, 200 million, realistically, in today's football world, you can spend it in one or two windows if you want, right? No problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if you have, let's say, a couple of million every year, let's say you get 10 million euros or 5 million euros come in every year, and you get 3.5 million euros from the hotel every year, and you add up some of these real estate things. Let's say you can add up to 15 to 20 million of passive income annually from real estate. Yeah, over 10 years, it's 200 million. Over 20 years, it's 400 million, so on, so on, so on. So it's much more valuable in the long term because it's it's.
Well, I understand because the banking that needs to be repaid until 2028 or 29 or something like that. So you need to sort of get out of that immediately. So you cannot keep the whole Dikilitaj project. You need to sell something to sort of being able to repay. So I understand that part, but for the rest of it, you're absolutely right. Keep it, rent it out, lease it, whatever, and create sort of an ongoing revenue stream for the club. And better even still, just start a real estate company within the club. Put some professionals there who are going to manage these assets. And create, and they will be self-providing, so they will be self-sufficient in that sense at a certain point. So they will not cost you anything, and you will only get sort of the profits and the dividends being upstream to the club. Because what Adalı said, which was quite interesting, which is also one of the articles he's asking authority for, is to acquire new assets.
Yeah,
he said, I want to exchange or acquire new assets, and he said, very interesting. He said, there's a lot of people trying to contact me and saying, okay, well, there's opportunity here. The club should invest, or that's something that only the club can get or acquire because it's Beşiktaş and the government wants to cooperate or wants to give, etc. So they can force something, or they have a key to a certain property and they can do something with it. Well, great, but create a real estate company that can manage those type of things, acquiring assets, selling assets, renting out, etc. They can do their own. Like I said, they will clear their own costs and they will generate revenue for the club, right? Instead of the president going after these type of deals and trying to manage it while managing the football club, etc. Just make it. It's such a good long-term plan. That's something I think really should be instated, and they can buy, sell properties, etc. under the wings of the club, and then generate the 100% generate money for the club. So I would really hope that they would do something like that because it sounded very interesting.
Yeah. And it also makes sense to an extent, I think, that the government is willing to work with the clubs, because of obviously Beşiktaş, Galatasaray, Fenerbahçe, they have a very big cultural value to the country. They are very ingrained in modern day Turkey. And then we've seen already, in the past, the government being very, especially with Galatasaray, giving them a lot of stuff. But also, debts being cleared from taxes in the past. Beşiktaş and Galatasaray, and I don't know if Fenerbahçe ever got those cleared. I think they were up to date with their taxes, but I think Beşiktaş and Galatasaray both got their taxes in the past cleared. So yeah, it makes sense that certain opportunities only present themselves to clubs rather than individuals, because the government is not going to want to work with, I don't know, random Ahmed on with the construction company.
Yeah,
but
you're absolutely right. No, that's how it works. Yes, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Because this will be long there after we're long and gone. The clubs, whereas whatever. But it makes sense, and that also explains why he wanted to add that particular thing on the agenda. And I do think that a lot of the things that he said, mainly in the Q&A, again, because I think the actual press conference was a lot of pointing fingers again. It was a lot of talking about the past again, and I understand, but I've had enough. I think all Beşiktaş fans have had enough of it. We know already you've beaten this horse to death, but like at a certain point you have to start. Now I am the president and I'm going to do it this way. I'm not going to repeat the mistakes of the past, but I'm also going to stop talking about them constantly, because you wanted to be the president so badly. You have been involved in the club in 2010. You've been involved in the club in 2019. You knew things that you weren't supposed to know. You disclosed them on live television in a debate, so you knew very well what you were going into. Let's stop talking about it. Let's move on. And we want to see what you have in store for the club, what your plans are to fix the mistakes of the past and to ensure the club of a better future. And we don't want 45 or 30 minutes of you complaining about what Hasan Arat and Hüseyin Yücel and then the other presidents before that you don't name because they're your buddies. So fed up with that, But the Q&A, because when the actual press conference finished, I was like, yeah, we didn't really learn anything from that other than Dusan Alimpijevic extended his contract by 2 years. That's the only new tidbit of news we got. But then the Q&A came, and the Q&A addressed a lot of the stuff that we talked about the other day and that you rightfully brought up for concerns. And personally, I have come out of it feeling a lot better about it. Of course, there's still the possibility that things go wrong and with these powers given, but like you said, if they can detail specific conditions, like terms for this power, this authority, and clear up more details to the members that will actually have to do the vote, so they actually know what on earth they're voting on. Because right now, it was kind of all just a little bit of a haze. What are we voting on? Yeah, we're voting. Yeah, we don't really know, right? And now we know a little bit more already, at least.
Yeah, for sure. But it was interesting that only in the Q&A he talked about the whole the petrol station, the gas station, because before that in his press release, sort of press statement, he didn't address it, and I was like, why haven't you addressed sort of, and also the share pledge? Why are you not addressing this?
Yeah.
And then in the Q&A, at least some journalist asked, he said, okay, but what about the other articles? Why aren't you addressing this? For instance, about the gas station, he said, well, it's basically out of our hands. The previous board already negotiated the deal, and they were going to sign, or they were willing to sign 15 years. But he said, and this is also very confusing to me, he said the lessee already holds a power of attorney on which basis they can already determine their own how long they want to stay, and they can build their whatever they want, etc., etc.
Okay.
And according to him, Hassan Arad signed that deal, while Hassan Arad said, I haven't signed it yet. So there's also, I don't know what's going on there, but that's sort of, according to him, he says, well, that's out of my hands. We need to agree on the 15 years. It was already approved for the previous board. So why I'm just asking reapproval, because I cannot sign it on that based on that approval. So this is not something that I came up with. But then does that mean he says we cannot cancel it, but yeah, it's also very okay. But what does it mean? Just roll over and sign, or can't we do anything else? Right? Do you understand what I mean? It's like we didn't know this, but you asked for this authority, and now you've explained it a bit better. I understand. Okay, your hands might be tied, but explain this a bit better so that we can all also agree and say, okay, your hands are tied. Let's see it as a lost cause. Sign it. Get the rental income, and that's it.
Yeah.
The share pledge, he didn't address itself, why he would want to use it. He only said, I want to sell the 90% of shares that we have if need be. He didn't say he has plans yet, if need be. He just wanted to have that power, which I also understand. That's fine. But then he also made the whole ordeal of and sort of these investors, they tried to lower the price and then go up again and lower it again. And I was like, yeah, but that's the stock market. So are you talking about real manipulation, or is just not happy with how that went, right? So I was also very confused about what he intended, or what he wanted to do there. So that part is still not clear to me. What he wants to do with the share pledge, for instance, why he needs that per se.
But he did mention it was about the 19%, and so not the full majority of the shares it would be. But that's again another very important detail that needs to be put in writing, that it's about the 19% surplus and not about the total 70% that the club owns. So that the club will never put its minimum of 51% that it needs to keep control to the members, that it can never put that up for collateral. That is very important. That 19% essentially is of no importance to us, right? Like,
no, it has its value, of course. So
it's
I understand that they
value,
want sort of I understand that they want their, and I'm all for it. That they want to, whenever they need, they can sell parts of it, right? It doesn't have to be 90% all at once, but maybe they want to put it on the market and just sell it.
Yeah,
it's fine, right? Why not? That's we didn't have it anyway.
Yeah.
So if you want to sell that 90%, that's fine. It doesn't endanger anything. It just creates process.
But that is also something that would make more sense to keep that for a rainy day, or just like when Dikilitaj gets off the ground. If that project is successful, then you would imagine the stock automatically going up significantly. If some of these projects come to fruition, if the team, the football team mainly, because that is essentially what, at the end of the day, that determines the success of the whole club, not just the football branch, but really it's if they start performing again, the stock will go up, and then of course it is understandable, because right now I think when we talked about this 19% surplus in the past, when we talked about the capital injection a while ago, you did mention that the club would not be able to just sell these 19% without certain parameters being met, I think. So maybe that is also why he needs the authority for that now, so that he can sell them when he sees it is necessary.
Yeah. But the thing is, now putting it on the market or selling it is not going to help, because the price is the price will tank even further. Interestingly enough, because you said after the press release, I was a bit more at ease, and I think the investors thought the same, because the sharing price after his statement increased with 7 cents. So yay. But there's a response, right, from the market. There's people welcomed sort of his explanation and his plans. I think so. You're right. They would need to look at a right moment, so to get sort of the maximum value out of it. So again, I'm not against him selling that 90%, but stipulate it, make it clear. And I also still don't know why he would need that pledge. But also, if he limits it to 19%, then it should be fine. Right? Then I'm not against it. And I had a debate about if he could go further than the 90%. Based on the bylaws. I said I won't get into the details, but even if there's a small bit of doubt on it, on clarity in the bylaws, on clarity in his statement, and I think then let's write it down, because he says my intention is 90% only, then it should also not be a problem to write that down.
Exactly. It should just be black and white on paper. It shouldn't be an issue at all.
Yeah. So then maybe there's Akatlar, which is also what you say. You don't want to do. There's municipality constraints. They cannot do anything with that project at the moment. So they looked into it, but there's no possibility for now to develop anything there.
Yeah, we'll have to give them some other land in exchange to get that zoning.
I don't know what the constraints are.
Or get Emla Konoda involved or something.
Maybe. But it's not going to be something in the short term. And you also already said it's very difficult to do something there. So I think they both were already aware that it would not be easy. So that also makes it sense then that you go for Dikiritash. Akaret, like Beşiktaş Plaza. One correction, I think I also said it was Fulia, but Akaret, there is different Beşiktaş Plaza. There are 2 towers. One tower is owned by Rami Koç, and one of the towers is owned by Beşiktaş, and that's where the hotel wants to go. I would also want to know if he talked to Rami Koç and said, listen, maybe we can make this one project for the hotel, that you also gain something from this, and we can even make it a better, more profitable project, right? At least I would want to hear from him. We looked into these options.
Well, they did meet.
We discussed it
last week, I think, right? We had a meeting.
Yeah, but he didn't say anything about because those buildings are really close to each other. It's on one terrain, so it would make sense. Maybe the hotel's interested in doing both, and then you can even make it a bigger project and make it even more profitable. I think. But and again, that's a business case thing. But he needs to address these type of question marks, I think, and then. Yeah, like I said, he is our president now, so we have to make do with him, and then empower him at least to do something, right? Because he's not going to do everything out of pocket or have another source of income. That's clear too.
That is something I was also curious about when he was mentioning that, he said, people are saying constantly you have to pay out of your own pocket, but we have already put in 30 to 35 million out of our own pockets, is what he said. But then maybe you can explain this to me. So they paid that, I think, to cover wages or to cover interest payments or whatever. But wouldn't it make more sense for them if they're going to put 30 million in of their own money anyway? Would it not make more sense to pool that 30 million with the 35 million that they got from the capital injection to pay off 65? And he said, we're going to put 40 more million in soon anyway. So that is in total 70 plus 35 is 105 million if you add it up. Wouldn't it have made more sense to pool that money together and buy us out of the bank union debt, so we can no longer have to pay those really heavy interest rates? That would free up cash flow to pay the players from the club's money, would it not? Would that not have made more sense, or am I oversimplifying it?
Well, I think that's to do with the availability of the money.
Mm.
So you're absolutely right. If it would be sitting there and available for them to put it in, so that 35 million that was done via a bridge loan. So they put that money up, and then I think later on they
We'll take it out.
offset that money with income from the club.
Mm-hmm.
The upcoming 40, I don't think it's there available yet, but they said we will cover it in any shape or form.
Mm-hmm.
That will be done. But you're absolutely right. If they already are planning to do so, and they know it comes out of their pockets, then please, for the love of God, pay 40 million now. Save yourself some interest.
Exactly.
And with that interest saved, you can pay the wages and sort of the 40 million that needs to be paid anyway.
You can pay yourself back too, but just do it at 0% if that's possible. I don't know if that's legal. Maybe that's not legal. Maybe they have to take a percentage.
I think you need to take a percentage.
Maybe, exactly. Maybe you need, but then do the lowest amount possible. Then you are saving the club millions upon millions upon millions, and you can just assure yourself of getting it back. Because I think some fans will be like, oh, but you put the money, you say you put it in the pocket, but you're taking it back. I have no problem with that. I don't think it's fair to expect from people who, I don't know what the means of these people are, how rich they are, but putting 35 million out of your own pockets in a football club like that, that's not something that a normal person can do. Also, not a wealthy person who is let's say your net worth is 200 million. Yeah, your 200 million is gonna be spent really quickly if you're gonna be doing that. Like that's only something billionaires can do without feeling it. So I have no problem with them putting in the money and then taking it back out later, as long as they don't do it at ridiculous interest rates or something, because then
No, I don't think it's fair to expect that to that extent.
Mm-hmm.
But also the situation is there, so that this is gonna. He knows that if the club cannot cover it, he needs to find it and cover it, right? So that also comes into play. But I think there's no willingness, or there might not be availability of those numbers now to sort of do what you sort of just explained or proposed, because otherwise it doesn't make sense to wait until December and then get slapped with that interest payment again, and then just pay interest for what, right? So if you can pay it now, then pay it now. You're absolutely right, but I think it has to do with the availability of cash and
completely understandable.
Because otherwise it doesn't make sense.
I mean, how many board members are there? 13, 10, something like that?
16.
Oh, okay, 16. Let's say they're all millionaires. Let's say they all have a net worth of between 3 and 10 million. I mean, then 30 million is a lot of money.
I mean, nobody would do that. No, in their right mind. Why? For what?
Plus, if you're a millionaire, I think what people don't really understand is most millionaires don't have millions on the bank. They have it all wrapped up in stock, in real estate. They don't actually have the money. They just it's like Elon Musk. He's a billionaire, but all his money is he bought Twitter by what did he do? I think he put up his stock, his stock as collateral because he didn't want to take it out because then he'd lose money, right? So
Of course, they have the wealth, but it's not. That doesn't mean cash in the bank. And of course, if you liquidate, you can sell those assets, etc. But obviously, they're not going to do that. So that doesn't mean much per se. And also, still, again, the reasoning. Why would they want to put it up sort of for what? It also doesn't make sense per se. They signed up for the job. It doesn't mean that they say, okay, you know what? I'm going to spend my whole family's inheritance on the club just to cover the debt or to pay some players. But I understand that.
But that's the romanticized idea that football fans have, right? They see Abramovich, they see these Saudi sheikhs, these Qatari sheikhs in PSG, and they those are a couple of examples in modern football where there are people who just pumped ridiculous amounts of money into the clubs, but that is not the norm. That is very much the exception, and Yeah.
It's not comparable because
No.
they are owners of the club.
Also.
For them it's an investment, so to
Also,
say.
yeah.
It can go good, could go
Mhm.
bad. But these are board members.
Yeah.
These are not owners of the club.
Mhm.
So I think that's a whole different
Yeah.
that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I don't like sort of the poverty play Adalı sometimes does.
Oh yeah.
But I also don't expect him to put all his wealth into
No.
into the club. Right? That's also not
That's
fair.
unreasonable. Is there anything else coming out of the press conference or the Q&A that you wanted to talk about? Otherwise, I have another topic I would like to talk to.
Yeah. So I think that the only thing, maybe a couple. So he said there was no arrears of salary payment. He confirmed that again. So I think that's good to know, right? Only May is not paid yet, he said, but the rest was all paid.
Yeah, but
so nobody's behind.
It's the 5th of June today, so that's not abnormal. I think.
Hopefully they will pay it this week. But and changing the debt from TL to euro.
Yes. That's
the last thing. And I think he ties them to the project because I think normally it's not possible, but maybe if you tie so they say the income of the project will be in euros. So maybe if they tie it like that,
why would it be in
then
euros?
You can sort of change.
I mean, the renters would be paying in lira, you would imagine, no?
No, yeah, but he said sort of we are doing everything, the whole calculations on the basis of euros.
Okay.
So that's how we're going to sort of deal with the numbers. Calculate the income, calculate the share, etc. It will all be based on euro prices.
Okay.
So that would also mean if you sell the assets, you don't say, okay, this is, let's say 30 million TL, but you will say, okay, 600,000 euros. The apartment will cost 600,000 euros, and whatever the equivalent is. I think that's sort of the way.
That makes sense. Like even 20 years ago, I remember my aunt bought a hotel. My aunt bought an apartment in Ankara, and they paid in dollars. They paid $150,000 for their apartment. Even back then. So I think a lot of real estate in Turkey gets bought and sold with foreign currency.
Or at least the equivalent. So they calculate then the price, and then whatever the equivalent is in TL. Because I think there's a new law a couple of years ago. You need
to protect the lira.
Exactly. So. I don't know how, but for he sees a way to change the debt back to euro. I don't know, but it also opens up for FX risk. Of course, at the moment, it's brilliant because you don't have that exchange risk. On the other hand, at the time when we went into the banking debt, everybody was happy going from euro to TL, and look at us now, right? So there is a risk that's going to be taken, and I don't know. I haven't heard them about how are they going to mitigate a similar situation that years from now we're like we have a huge euro debt which we cannot repay, and our income is in TL, etc. Right?
I don't know because if the income of the real estate project stays in euros and you can convert more and more of your income to euros, obviously tickets and stuff like that is always going to be in lira. But it's also interesting though that this is a problem that is very unique to Turks because nobody else in Europe has this issue.
No, not to this extent. Definitely not. No, it's and I understand. So I understand what he's trying to do. But again, here, be careful. Have mitigating risk measures in place, and then it's fine, right? You can do it. So that was the only point. I sort of 2 points that were left, of which I thought, okay, he said something about it. It's fine, but the devil is in the detail. To be fair,
exactly. It's just all about transparency, and they're right now. I think there's a little bit of a lack of that, and I think he should not feel offended because I get the sense sometimes that he's like, oh, why do I have to explain myself? No, of course you have to explain yourself. I mean, if you've been president for 12 years or for 7 years or for whatever, or if you do this successfully and you not just save the club, but you provided of future financial security, then in 6 years and you want to do a new project, people might not scrutinize you then, because then they trust
No.
you. But trust is something you have to earn. And that is, again, not a personal thing, but he hasn't earned anyone's trust so far. He has to prove himself. Now, I wanted to talk to you about something else, though, Ural. We were talking about this earlier again in our community chat, and we were talking about the fans, or at least a section of the fans. And, we were talking about this just before as well. That's why I thought it might be a fun subject to talk about. But, where, for example, you have fans who are like, oh, you just have to pay it out of your own pocket, and but like these are all very unrealistic expectations. You also have those fans who are like writing their dream teams on Twitter and on other social media. They're posting these lineups with like 7, 8, 9 new players, all very high cost players, high profile players. And sometimes you wonder, like, where are these people? Like, how are their heads so far up the sky that they don't understand that these things are not possible? Or the whole Cristiano Ronaldo thing that we've been going through the last month or so, where people are going crazy about that. Is that something you want to have a say about, perhaps? Because I had the sense that you were a little bit frustrated with that as well.
My frustration was really about indeed expectation, because I think also the debate was indeed like change out the whole squad, exit the players that we cannot sell, etc. And to be fair, Adalı said in the press in the Q&A, he said we will pay off players that we want to who are not sort of in it, not giving how do you say that, giving their all on the pitch, etc.
Who don't want to be here, essentially, who are just here for a payday.
Yeah, exactly. He said, and I was surprised because you're basically sort of saying in the negotiation, well, we will pay your full price just for you to go away. But I was surprised because I wouldn't even expect that, right? Because it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But he still even said that, and then people expect, okay, we're gonna sort of buy 11 players, etc. And I understand they might not pay attention to sort of the financials that much, but if you're realistic, maybe 3 players, and then we're done for this transfer period. And I know that nobody wants to hear this. But it's very likely that that would be it. To be fair, and then in the winter we can add some, and that is sort of an ongoing thing. But we're not going to replace 11 players in this winter.
I think the whole thing that sparked the conversation earlier was the fact that Adalı kind of had to defend Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at the press conference as well, right? Because something Ole said about 2-3 weeks ago really went down the wrong windpipe with a lot of fans. He said at the time that our goal for next season will be to close the gap with the top 2. And of course, a lot of our fans, including some of my friends, were up in arms. They're like, oh, how can you say that? We're not Ankara Gücü. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, guys, and also because I think Ole said something of, last season 40 points, this season 30 points, there's a big gap there point-wise.
Of course,
Yeah. But that is also the reality of the situation. And based on that statement alone, a lot of fans have now decided for themselves, like, this guy he's not going to bring us forward. He's not going to make us champions. Just based on that, because in their minds, he has a small club mentality. And it's so, I don't understand it. Like, our fans are ostriches. They just put their head in the sand. They don't want to hear the truth. This is the situation right now with the squad that we have available right now. If you're going to ask that question, he is not going to say, we're going to be champions next year. Yeah, of course we want to compete and we want to play for the championship, but that is what closing the gap with the top 2 means, isn't it? It's competing. It's being, because now the last 2 seasons, we have not been competing with them. We've been so far behind. Yeah, we beat them this season, both of them, but we haven't been able to breathe down their necks and make their lives difficult other than in those individual matches. We haven't, we haven't been able to. In Dutch, we say hun het vuur aan de schenen leggen. We haven't been able to do that. And that is just the cold, hard truth. I don't think Ole said anything wrong there. I don't understand why our fan base becomes so rabid over something futureless like that. It's so insignificant, and they make it's like a mosquito, and they take a little mosquito, they take its little stabber or whatever that is, they blow it up until it's as big as an elephant. That's what they're making out of it. I don't understand it. It's
But the thing is, they're just saying we want to be fooled. Just tell us, paint us these pictures, these fake pictures, whatever, Fata Morganas, and then we're fine. And then when you don't make it, we'll be pissed off and we'll make chaos again.
You said we would be champions in
Exactly.
September, and now we're 40 points behind. How dare? Like Ahmed Nourchebi in November in 2023 was still saying we're gonna be champions. We will be champions. Not like I hope. No, you said like a factual statement. We're gonna be champions. 2 weeks later, I think he resigned or something.
But that's what the fans want.
Yeah.
Just tell them what they want to hear. They say, okay, we're going to be champions. But nobody reads between the lines, because what Ole actually said, if you read between the lines, it's not about becoming third or sort of closing the gap to the second. He's saying this squad, he doesn't see the possibility with this squad to say, okay, we can become champion. Of course he wants to be champion. Ole is a winner. He played at a huge club and he played for prize, etc. Come on.
Won the Champions League.
Come on,
so many Premier League titles.
We don't have to doubt his intentions or what he wants to achieve at Beşiktaş, because him becoming a trainer
also
here.
As a coach, mind you,
Exactly.
because he won the first ever championship in Molde's history, and he won it back to back, 2 titles in a row. Like, because people are like, yeah, okay, but maybe as a football player, but as a coach, no, as a coach, he has written history in Norwegian football as well. So he has won prizes. And it's like, oh yeah, but with Manchester United as a coach, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, he did not have the squad to do anything with Manchester United. Did you see what he was up against with Manchester City in the time? Like, what was he supposed to do with that squad? Name me one world-class player he had under his wing back then. Because, I mean, if you say Cristiano Ronaldo, he was... I was going to say Ronaldo. 37-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo is not, it's not prime Ronaldo. So it's like, these people are delusional sometimes.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Nobody reads between the lines. He's basically saying, and Ole had a more concrete statement later. He said, well, basically, I don't have the squad. We need better players, because this is the maximum capacity I can get out of them, and I believe that no other coach can get even more out of them. This is sort of the talent pool we have, and this is it. This is our max, and that's what they proved, right? So
and you know what the worst thing is, Ural?
What do you expect?
People like Sergen, and I love Sergen. Don't get me wrong; he's my all-time favorite player, and I think he's a great media personality as well. But like he himself, 1 week he says, "Yeah, with this team, you can't be successful. It's impossible." But then the next week he's like, yeah, Ole can be champions. Yeah, no, with this team he can't. No, but like, how are you? And it's the same thing with people like Günther Kironay and all these media figures. Like they, and even our fans, like they are now forming an opinion and judging a coach based on... Sergen himself did not... He's like, Serdal Adalı said this at the press conference. Sergen told me 5 months ago, this team will eat us alive. We will, both you and me, it will cannibalize us, whatever. We won't be, it's impossible to be
successful. We won't survive it, yeah.
Exactly. So, like, they know the reality, but still, they say, okay, Ole failed. Like, how? Because he didn't finish third?
No, because he knows he's not going to get more than 3 transfers, cross fingers. He already knows that. He knows because of the budget constraint, etc. He's not going to be able to change the whole team, and also maybe not get his A-list players that he put on the list, right? He knows those constraints. But our fans don't want to hear that.
But then Sergen needs to say Ole will not be champions, but nobody will be. Like, no coach is going to be champion with this team next season. If this team gets... I think if we get 3... But when I say good, it really needs to be like Rafa Silva good. Not exactly, but... You know, it needs to be Rafa Silva
ready to go, yeah.
Ready to go, and players that deliver and can go for a couple of years that you can build on. Yeah. And I'm all for that. I think if we would have taken this approach 4 or 5 years ago, and we would have said, okay, we are going to build a new team. Every window, we are going to bring in 3 quality players. I think if we would have done that 5 years ago, we would be in a very different place right now. But the difference is, instead of doing that, what did we do? We saw, we have a situation at left back, situation at right back. We need a left central defender. We need a right central defender. Oh, we need a striker. We need a winger. We need a number 10. We need a number 6. So every window we bring, instead of 3 good players, we bring maybe 1 if we're lucky. I mean, how many good players have we signed in the last 4 years that are still there? Rafa and Masuaku, I guess, if you count Masuaku, and Felix Urukai now maybe. Like, we've signed some, but none of them. Like, I think only Rafa is a player where you can really say, like, okay, this is somebody you can build. Yeah. You can exceptional, exactly. Yeah. So instead of bringing even just 3 good, if you can bring 3 or 2 exceptional players in a window, instead of bringing 7 or 8 mediocre players to fill those gaps. But that's what we've been doing, right? Instead of bringing in 3 or 2 exceptional players, we have taken that money and spread it out real thin, and we have signed cheap options, whether it's a cheap option in the sense of a free transfer that is 30 plus years old, that is maybe not a bad player, but is past his prime. Take Ciro Immobile, for example. If I say cheap, a lot of people will call me crazy. But in a way it is. Because, okay, 6 million a year is a lot of money. But you pay 3 million euros transfer fee, and then you pay 6 million over the course of the year. That is a lot smaller of an investment than paying 15 million euros for a striker in his prime. Because then you have to have that. It's like we were talking about earlier. If you have the money, then it's easy to pay. But one of the biggest problems of the club is cash flow, and that is why Beşiktaş keep putting the buck down the road. Because okay, we can spread it out, and then it's possible. And okay, you can spread out transfer fees as well. But there's a reason why Beşiktaş never pays big transfer fees, and the last 2 times we've done it were bad investments. But I still think that it's much better to pay 10 or 12 million euros for a really good player. It has to be a really good player, of course. To pay for a certainty of a player that's like 26, 27 in their primes that can go for the next 4 or 5 years. I think that's much better than paying less money on Ciro Immobile. Ciro Immobile is not maybe the best example, but how many players, like take Ante Rebic, Paulista is an example. I think Paulista is a good player, but you know, he has his drawbacks. There's so many players that we have signed over really not just the last years, but like ever since I've been a fan, really. We've always gone for these cheap options in a way. They're cheap in the beginning and then they're expensive on the back end because they make a lot more money. But that's just, it doesn't work. You don't become successful like that. You can win a couple of championships, but you can't create a dynasty because your foundations aren't solid. And the only way to create a dynasty, which is I think what everyone wants, it's very difficult, but what everyone wants is, and that the only way to do that is by really solid foundations. Like Club Brugge, for example, what they did over the last 10, 15 years. They have laid the groundworks for domination, but that's impossible when you do business like we do it.
That's that we do not enable ourselves, and the moment that we enable ourselves, we also sabotage ourselves, because then we go crazy and we sort of say, I'm sure that if we had the money, that Ronaldo would be really screaming even harder for it, just bringing in. We have the money.
If we had it, we would do it, right? Like, I think
again, that's stupid because then we are sabotaging ourselves again.
Yeah, exactly. But I think Adalı, he said it as a joke, but he said if I had the money, I would bring Ronaldo and Messi.
Yeah.
You know, okay. I don't know if I want a 40-year-old Ronaldo, and I take Messi probably, but
it sounds all nice, but it doesn't fit your strategy or your plan if you're really serious about it. And I wonder how you feel then, because Fikret Orman tried something at the later stage of his presidency, especially when he was successful at the championships, and then he sold Cenk, right, for a serious amount of money. Well, we finally sort of got real transfer money, sort of really earning from the performances that we have, because once you have the performances, you also see that our transfer fees goes up for outgoing players. You create a market for the players, while there might not be a market if you're not that successful, right? But he also said, business will only grow if you sort of add on that, meaning invest in players, getting these exceptional players, etc., so that we can also get these excellent performances and then sort of sell more, etc. So that's how we should grow. But he was sort of almost beheaded for it, because that was not the Beşiktaş way almost. So how do you feel about that sort of that period of time where they tried something like that?
Yeah, but I remember the early 2010s very vividly. You know, we got Quaresma, and he did really well in his first months. And then there was news of clubs being interested. But then, of course, fans are like, no, we can't sell him. Like, you know, like now with Rafa. And I have this opinion too. I'm guilty of it myself. You know, and we had this with Manuel Fernandes. You know, we all thought after the first 6 months, wow, what a fantastic player. And we got him for really cheap. I think we paid 2.2 million. And then there was plenty of interest over the course of his contract. But he was so popular that whoever was the president at the time, they knew if we sell him, the fans are gonna be so pissed. And then it happened with Ozhan. It happened to an extent with Gökhan Töre, but Gökhan Töre, I think we should have sold Gökhan when we could, but then we didn't.
There was a period,
and then we did end up loaning him out, but at that point he had already issues with his knee, and we've had so many players, like for example Sosa. I think the money we got for Sosa, I think we got 7 million for him at the time. He was really good that one, like especially the last 6 months of the championship year. But he was also 30 years old. If you can get 7 million euros for a 30-year-old player that you paid 3.5 for or whatever, like 2 years earlier, it's not bad business. You know, Ersan, people were so pissed off when we sold Ersan. Oh, they're selling the championship. We got 7.5 million euros for Ersan. That's a lot of money, especially back then. It was for Beşiktaş. It's a lot of money.
That's having a romantic view versus having a business view and say, you know what, buy, sell, become bigger.
That's what Ajax do. Ajax have always done this. Like I remember with Frank de Boer, somehow they sold their best players every year, and they still became champions the next year with Frank de Boer. And of course, this doesn't always last because you have other clubs like Feyenoord, mainly PSV, who are, also very successful. So you can't win the title every year. And it's going to be the same way in Turkey. You can't win the title every year. There's Galatasaray and there's Fenerbahce. You can't win the title every year. But if you run a club like this, and okay, I know Ajax right now are a little bit in a bad financial situation. But, I mean, their bad financial situation is completely... you can't compare it with our situation. Yeah, exactly. Like they're like, oh, but Ajax have so much trouble.
We wish that type of
situation. They are in a position where, okay, we are going to tighten our belt now because if we don't, then we will become a Beşiktaş.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they are tightening their belt at the correct time, and of course, it's a kind of a two-way street because if you tighten your belt, you diminish your chances at Champions League football, for example, and that is really impactful. But somehow Ajax still managed to get Champions League football this year.
Exactly, they almost became champion. So
yeah, exactly. So Yeah, so even with tightening their belt, they still managed to, and I know everyone, you included, because you're an Ajax fan. Like, for you, it's a big disappointment to lose the title on the last day. But if you look at it from where they come and look at their squad, look at what they have, they should have never been in that position to be champion on the last match day anyway. But it's were.
It's almost as if Beşiktaş would be sort of competing for the title this year.
Yeah.
If everybody would be completely
or next
surprised,
year, if you would tell us right now, Beşiktaş are going to go for the championship next season until the final match day. They won't win it, but they will be in the race until the final match day. I think every fan will be, I'd sign for that right now.
So
of
too.
course, when it happens, because we are fans and we're greedy, then we start saying, fuck this coach, fire him, he can't make us champions. But if you then look probably at what the material he would have available and what he did, like look at what Farioli did at Ajax, it's almost a miracle what he did. He almost it's almost like what happened with us this weekend, that we still somehow managed to get third place.
It's comparable in that sense.
That was going into it. I think nobody would have believed it, but it almost happened. If not for like 60 seconds, then we would have been third. But that's football, right?
But again, sort of. So also to have a bit of positive note, what I like about all that, he really tries to have a plan on the football part. So forget about all business, because I am very critical about it, because I understand that part. I think and I think it's also fair criticism in that sense, because he lacks a little bit of performance on that side. But he brought in a good coaching team. He brought in a good scouting team. Okay, we still need to see the results, but hopefully it will pan out. And they will really put in, like you said, work towards sort of creating a dynasty, having a plan, a project that will become fruitful for the years to come. Right? I really hope. I think the right people are there. We should not be impatient. I don't expect miracles this transfer period, to be honest. I think 3 at best, and that could be interesting enough for next year. Does it mean we don't want to become champion? Of course. But let's also be realistic, right? If you only add 3 players, that doesn't mean that you can already say, okay, we will be champions next year, right? And if you want to hear it, then that's fine. But then you're also pulling yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I do think that with 3 players, you can come a lot closer. There's no reason why you can't compete.
Depends on which positions, right?
Yes, exactly. I think if Beşiktaş can add a striker and a winger, so that we fix. I don't know if you agree with this, Ural, but I think our biggest issue this season was scoring goals. That was the single biggest issue, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree with that.
But that's obvious from the statistics, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's obvious too. But some people are still saying, no, we need to get some fullbacks. And yes, I understand. We do need to get fullbacks. In an ideal world, you get fullbacks. But if you only can make 3 transfers, I wouldn't transfer a fullback. I would extend Masuaku. I would extend Svensson.
Yeah,
I know it's not a popular opinion. I know they are both very maligned by the fans. Like, a lot of fans just, okay, Masuaku has 10 assists this season. So there's also a lot of fans who are like, oh, Masuaku's great. I think there's a little bit of an in-between there. Because first and foremost, I don't think Masuaku would ever get 10 assists in a proper team, because now what happened, Masuaku was the main focal point of all our wing attacks.
There was no wing.
No, he was Quaresma, essentially. He was told, here's the ball, cross it in as many times as you want. 184 crosses this season in the Super League. 184. That's an average of 5.5 crosses per game.
How many hit targets?
22.8% arrived. So 42 total crosses from the 184 found their mark. So that, I'm not saying that's terrible, but I think in a team where he has a good winger in front of him, where the other side has a good winger, where there's a good striker, where there's more of a creative outlet, where he is not the main man who has to provide balls into the box, because yes, Rafa Silva is our best player, but Rafa Silva is also more a man who gets on the end of a pass or on the end of a cross. He is a good creator, I think, when he wants to be, but that's not his main strength. His main strength is running off the ball, finding pockets of space, and scoring goals, even though he's maybe not the most lethal finisher. But we lack that severely. And I think if you do have that, let's say you have two wingers that can create chances more reliably than, for example, Rasicka can, then I think Masuaku becomes a far smaller focal point of your attacks, and then he isn't going to get you 10 assists. If you look at his career, I think up until this season, I think his best season was like 4 assists or something, which is still good, I think, for a fullback. I think if your fullback can provide you 4, 5, 6 assists in a season, that's really nice. It's an added bonus.
Yeah, but look, Masuaku, he also makes a lot of defense mistakes. So
yeah, especially first half of the season.
Yeah, he's not an ideal candidate. But if you have to go priority wise, then just look at the statistics, and you see you have one of the better defenses in this league this year. So it's not a huge problem, right? It should not be your first point of attention. Of course, we want to change it, but priority wise,
you can be champions with this. We won the league with Tolga, Tosic, and who was next to Tosic? Ersin for 6 months, and then who was the other guy next to Tosic? Alexis Delgado, and then Marcelo, I guess. But we won the league with Tolga in goal, and Ismail Koibashi on the left back, and Andreas Beck. I liked Andreas Beck, but Andreas Beck, I think, is like Svensson. He's good, reliable fullback, similar profile. Offensively, not the greatest, but, and then Ismail Koibashi, we always laughed at him back then. And now he became a proper footballer, apparently, if you look at that goal he scored against us. But we won the league with that. I think you can win the league with this back line.
I think we can make do. Yes.
Yeah. If you put Osimhen up top, and I don't like Barış Alper Yılmaz, but put Barış Alper Yılmaz on one side, put Yunus Akgün, and then put Rafa behind him. If you have those 4, I think you win the league.
Yeah, I think so too.
Or else I'll put it this way: if you change Galatasaray's defense and you give all their defenders to us, and we give all our defenders to them, I still think they win the league this season. But I don't think they just scored so easily. They scored out of nowhere. They needed nothing to score goals, and that is how you win the league.
You're absolutely right. I don't want any Galatasaray players, but
No. I'm just making I'm just trying to make a point.
I just don't want to see that image, but you're right.
So you would say no to Osimhen if he could come to Beşiktaş right now? You'd say no?
Well, of course, I like the sort of the play, but for that price, for that money, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 75 million euros. And 20. Some rumors are saying that Galatasaray are offering him 20 million for a year. Yeah, that is absolutely insane.
It's a great player, but come on. I don't want to even fantasize about.
You don't need Victor Osimhen to win the league in Turkey.
No, especially if you can sort of have good wingers, get a better assist, and get sort of the better options in the attack. I don't think so either. So you're right. The priority should be on the wingers, and you say 1. I would want 2, to be honest, on both sides, even despite Kenny.
You need a striker too.
And a striker,
yeah. So I think when you go, you need a 6.
Yeah,
I think you need a 6.
Yeah, that's also a problem. But so do you think that Musrati will definitely be gone, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's. He talked about him as well in the press conference yesterday, I think, didn't he?
I did, but I can't recall what sort of he...
Yeah, I think he said that we will definitely sell him. Or I think. So I think Musrati will
Demirege might come.
Demirege might come back, but do you think I don't think Demirege is the style of 6 you need. Because he is very, in a way, similar to Musrati. He's not very physical. He's a little slower. He's a good passer, but he's not physical. He's not. I think what our fans and what Turkish football fans in general kind of expect from their 6 is a very athletic and physical number 6, a la Stefan Apia. like a beast. Or was Joseph, was a very good number 6. Like that, they constantly give that example of Joseph. They constantly give that example. I think that's what people want, and I think unless
But
you
it
get
needs, it needs to fit the system. People can want whatever they want, but it needs
yeah,
to fit the system of Ole, right? That's more important to me than anything else. So if Demerega would fit that system, then we should try it. But Demerega is also a good example of what you said earlier about us not wanting to sort of sell. So people are now against sort of selling Demerega, but I think it's a good opportunity. Why not? Yeah, of course, maybe we get 1 or 2 million more, but in itself, it's not a bad thing. But you see a lot of backlash. Why are we selling him? He's such. But then again, and then we come to the point. He might come back, and then what? And then you're saying he might not fit the system. Exactly.
Or he has a bad season, and instead of selling him for 8 million next season, you sell him for 3 or for 4, right?
Yeah.
Because
so either he fits. Or doesn't, and then please sell him then, right? So, but we cannot release, we cannot sort of say goodbye to these type of players apparently.
So supposedly Rio Ave have 5 more days to trigger his release clause, and but apparently this is also something that Adalı said, is they don't have the money to buy him, so they need a club to come in with a sufficient offer to make it worth their while. And the problem, I guess, for them is they need to pay us 5 million, and then they need to also pay us 20% on the profits. So if they sell him for 6 million, it's not worth it for them. They probably also agreed with him the signing bonus or something, maybe 200, 300k. So they have to sell him. I think that the number they rumored that they want is 10 million. For it to be worth it to them. And there were rumors that they have had offers of, I believe in the Portuguese media actually, that they have had offers of up to 8, but that's not enough. But that's not enough for them. So that's potentially interesting for Beşiktaş, right? Because if then he comes back, we can take the 8.
Sell him immediately then, and also for the negotiating clubs is interesting because since they know this, and Rio Ave might not able to trigger the clause for the by themselves, then those interest clubs could also say, you know what, let them go back to Beşiktaş and we'll negotiate directly with Beşiktaş. Right?
Because then instead of paying
for a discount, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. Because instead of paying 10 million to Rio Ave, they can pay 9 million to us.
Exactly.
So
which is more beneficial for us and beneficial for the buyer. So that makes sense.
And worst case scenario, nobody puts in an offer and then you keep him or you loan him again.
Yeah.
But I personally, I'm not in favor of keeping him because I saw him play for us last year. He does not seem to me like a player that's going to work out for Beşiktaş.
I also think then we need to sell him, right? So then if this is if you have this, if this is the idea, and let's say Ole also agrees to this, of course he's charmed by the players, and I believe that, and he had made a good development in the Portuguese league. It's all true, but if it's not going to fit the system, then please sell it. It doesn't matter, 5 million, 9 million.
And it also depends. Like, I'm not saying he is never gonna be good enough. Maybe if he matures and he gets a couple of more seasons under his belt. Like, again, I haven't seen him play at Rio Ave. I have only watched some clips, so I don't know. Maybe he became a fantastic player there in a year. I somehow doubt that in a year he made that much progress. There was already talent there. You could see that his passing game was really quite good. But like physically, like as a 6, I see him more as a Ozhan type then, next to the 6, a deep lying playmaker. I don't think there's an actual 6 there, and that is what we need right now. So
I fully agree. But again, that is just an example. It's the same discussion with Semi, right? People don't want him to be sold. Some people want him to sold, but just loan him out, right? It's not going to fit in. It doesn't fit the system at the moment, especially if you get another forward. Loan him out. Make sure that he develops in another league. Make some steps and become an asset a bigger asset for the club.
Thought provoking for you. Would you loan Simi to Ajax with a buyout clause and a significant percentage on his next sale? Because Ajax need a striker.
Yeah.
Right. What do you
Yeah,
think?
the buyout clause is the only doubt in my mind, because I think if there's
Fans would riot if we send him to Ajax and we say 15 million buyout clause and then he scores 30 goals in the Eredivisie, then they're gonna be like, oh my god, he's worth 50 million now. What did you do?
I think that's the difficulty. I think that if things would go as expected, he would definitely make a mark at Ajax. Ajax will enable him, or he will become, I think, the player that everybody expects him to be.
But Ajax would never loan. Why would Ajax loan him if they
No,
didn't
they
have they need to have an option.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. They won't. And that's where my difficulty, because I think he would really perform. So either he would completely tank, right, did not perform well, or he will pick it up and really become a good player.
Yeah, I think so too.
And then become very valuable.
Yeah.
So that's where my difficulty. So I think definitely loan him out to Ajax. I think that would be a very good move. But the price is the price. Yeah. But if need be, why not, right? Because 50 million is still, or 20 or whatever they agree, whatever the percentage is. Let's do it. This is exactly what we spoke about. Yeah. Building the opportunity to become bigger and better and have bigger budgets, etc. This is where it starts. You also need to dare to make these type of deals and not try to hog everyone and not sort of have a shitty career for them, right?
And you need to also just accept reality. If we if we sell him to Ajax for 15 million, for example, and he blows up there, they are going to sell him for 50, 60 million. But we would never, ever get that money. Even if he becomes top scorer next year, 30 goals in the Super League, no way in hell. Ajax is different. Yeah. If he goes to Ajax, Ajax is like a Ferrari. People pay because it's got the brand of Ajax on it. Beşiktaş is like Fiat. It's like a Fiat. People are not, yeah, but that's the truth. That's the truth, Ural. We're a Fiat right now, and people are
my Beşiktaş arm.
People are not paying 200,000 euros for a Fiat. You know.
No, but I understand what you mean, and that's exactly it. So, but again, we need to make these type of transfers, because it also rubs off on Beşiktaş. Hey, there was a player from Turkey. He succeeded in Ajax. Hey, maybe Mustafa or the successor of Mustafa. So attention will be focused on our academy, not even on our main team, but on our academy, and that's what you need to have to become sort of this machine of talent,
churning out talent. Exactly. And if you want to become Ajax in 20 years, let's say, then you need to start now with giving these players opportunity to go abroad and succeed. You know,
you're not going to convince our fans. I think this is going to be very tough.
No,
this
of course
is going
not.
to be very.
But that also requires a president who is very that. This is one of the things. One of my main issues with Serdal Adalı is, I find he's very reactionary to social media. I don't know if this is true, of course, because it's Sercan Dikme. But today, Sercan Dikme wrote that the transfer plans in Beşiktaş have changed. Serdal Adalı is now focusing on bringing in big stars. And I'm thinking to myself, what?
I don't think that's true, right? Come on.
No, I don't think so either. But it also kind of depends on what you mean by that, right? Is he going to go after somebody like Anthony, for example, somebody who is on the outs at Manchester United, needs to go, but had a really good season at Real Betis. Look, I think we can't afford him, because I think when he signed for Manchester United, he signed a ridiculous contract. But I do think that those types of players are interesting. Players who went to a big club and it didn't quite work out, but they still have hunger in them, you know? Because sometimes that step is too high. But we aren't Manchester United, whether you like to acknowledge that or not as a fan. But, that's just the truth, right? The pressure at Beşiktaş, I think, is very comparable to any club in the world. I think the pressure at Beşiktaş, Fenerbahçe, and Galatasaray is as big as it is at Real Madrid or Barcelona.
Yeah. Sometimes I think even higher, because we have very unrealistic fans, and sort of also unrealistic pressure in that sense.
But the level is a lot lower. So a player like Anthony, who did really well in the Netherlands and did really well, also in the Champions League and stuff, he can go to the Turkish league and ball out. Whereas in the Premier League,
I would really want to see him come to Beşiktaş. That would be, I think he would kill it in the league.
I think so too. Obviously, I don't think it's financially feasible, but maybe if Dikilitas works out and it does, it liberates us from these interest payments, and then in 5 years' time, maybe, I don't know. This is one of the last things actually. Did Adalı give any indication to when Beşiktaş would start seeing money out of the Dikilitas project?
No. So the thing is, because somebody asked, is there a prepayment? Like, can we see proceeds from? But that's not the setup of this deal. Yeah. So as soon as possible. But there was not. It's not like that this year there will be some inflow of money to. So it also doesn't solve the short-term problem in that sense. He still needs to find other means of income to address this interest payment or repayments, etc. But and you cannot be, and even still, right, even if sort of under Turkish conditions, because they construct very quickly, let's say, then I think even fast would be 2 years would be really fast. You have the planning, all the permits,
the permits take ages. Like, I mean, if it is anything like here in Belgium, it can take a very long time.
Let's say that goes to the quickest way possible, then I think 2 years. It will at least take 2 years to sort of finish the project, and of course you can already get some. You can pre-sell. You can already pre-sell. So once they have the plan and the marketing, and they can start selling units.
Of course.
And then you can already So that can happen, but still that doesn't solve the.
But that's not something that is fixed in, because he said, I want to get us out from under the bank union within 6 months of the project. I don't know if he said starting or completion. I don't remember what he said. But he did say 6 months, within 6 months of that.
I didn't catch that, to be honest. He said something. He said something on it. You're right. I remember. I don't know. I remember exactly what, but he was still saying there was because I thought I remember. I thought, okay, so he's again promising that we'll be out of the banking debt in 6 months' time. But I don't know. It wasn't 6 months from now, but 6 months from. And I thought, okay, there's another promise you might not be able to keep. So hold your horse. But
but I mean, if the project starts, that is not necessarily unrealistic, because like you said, if they can pre-sell things, then you have income already. You can get that 120. I don't know how many apartments they're gonna be, or whatever it's gonna, or villa, or what is it?
It's unclear yet.
Whatever it's gonna be, but you can like you said, you can pre-sell once the permits are approved, once the works have started. Like if you have any experience in that, like here it happens all the time. Like, they are building a new project and they're already selling the apartments, but obviously
off plan,
but not everything sells. Like some people buy like the real, like the rooftop penthouse or something that gets probably sold really quickly, but some other places might stay until after it's finished, and then it may still, it isn't instantly sold all the time, especially if you're asking a lot of money. If you're asking 600,000 euros for whatever it's gonna be, not everyone can pay that, of course. So
no, of course not. But I don't think they'll have a problem with selling it because of location and those type of things. But you're right. So if they once they start pre-selling, then it's very much feasible. You're absolutely right. But it was funny that he sort of dared to make another sort of promise, saying that we went out of the.
I saw some comments on that from people saying, "Oh, what happened to 11 May and stuff like that."
Exactly. So that's quite interesting. I have one final question for you, because he said, "I want to agree with Ciro on a match-based fee," and then he said, "I want to do this with other players as well." Ciro hasn't said yes, but what other players do you think he will want to go to a match-based?
Maybe Rafa.
Really?
But,
okay.
Maybe, I'm just saying, because Rafa makes 6 million too, guaranteed. But if you can make that 3 million and then 3 million in bonuses, Rafa, he plays 50 games every year. He might end up making more. He might end up making 10 million.
So why are you saying
maybe I wouldn't do it with Rafa, but I don't know. It's a good question. Like, I mean, Oxlade-Chamberlain is obviously somebody you would think of who's on a high wage and who you don't want to pay that high wage and guaranteed money. But then I think you want to get rid of him. And that's also something he mentioned, is that Ole has been playing Ox with the idea of, if we play him, and we talked about this on the podcast, I don't know if you remember well, but I think I've mentioned this a few times to the guys, like, I think he might be playing him so that he gets more eyes on him, and so that it's more it's easier.
This a couple of times.
So it's easier to move him out. I was actually really happy. I know it's not a smart thing for him to say that, but I was really happy to hear it, because not for my own ego, but I was very happy to hear that, because that means that Ole is thinking not about short term. He is thinking about because this is almost no manager does this. Managers are always thinking about tomorrow, about the result, about, because they need the results to secure their own future. Very few managers do what's best for the club. I think playing Ox is what's best for the club. I think playing Ox over and Rashica over Kenny is what's best for the club. If you look at it from the perspective of, we want to get rid of these guys. Then it makes sense to play Rashica over Kenny. That's the only way it makes sense, in my opinion. So I hope. I hope now. My hope now is, okay, he's done this for Ox, clearly, deliberately. I am hoping now the same thought went into Rashica. That the idea is, okay, we're going to keep playing him every week, and hopefully he gets some assists, he gets some goals, and then we can maybe sell him, or at least, get a club who wants him enough to pay him or the money that we pay him, and we can let him go for free or for cheap. I would be okay with that.
That would be a logical explanation, because I think at least for Ox you can say he didn't perform that bad since he played.
But he's not worth the money we pay him.
That's something else. But at least I also can understand why Ole played him. For that reason, that's clear. But also on the other hand, he didn't play that bad when he had to play. Wasn't always perfect. Was what we expected. No. Maybe not. But Rashica was, in my eyes, much worse than performance-wise than Ox. So I thought about João Mario. I think he's not the one who plays every game. Also not the starting 11. He might be the one that he wants to have a sort of a fee base.
Yeah, but he doesn't. Supposedly, he only is on 1.6 million a year, so he isn't making the big money. Supposedly, because
so it's not worthwhile. You mean to?
I have a hard time believing that, because I think he was on a lot of money at Benfica. I don't think 1.6 million does not sound right to me. That sounds cheap, like João Mario to me seems more like a 3.5 million a year type of player. Because because you have to remember, when Benfica signed him, he had just come from Sporting, and I think they might have won the league. So he was a really, really big coup for them. So I think he was probably on more wages than Rafa was, because Rafa was only on 2.5 million, I think, at Benfica, which is one of the reasons why he ended up letting his contract expire, because Di Maria was on 9 million and Rafa was only on 2.5. Rafa wanted, Rafa's 31 years old, so he's like, okay, I want to get a big contract now. And Benfica didn't want to give him that big of a contract, so that's why he wanted to go somewhere else.
And we paid a huge premium. That's.
But João Mario, if he is on a higher contract, then that would make sense. But Gabriel Paulista makes perfect sense for Paulista, because he's on 3 million a year, and he is somebody. I think when he plays, we all really like him, but the problem is that he missed half the season due to injury.
Exactly.
So for him, it would make a lot of sense. And I think, because he mentioned this as well about Ciro is a he was complimenting the personality, the character, the human being that Ciro Immobile was, and that he was open to the idea. I think Paulista is very similar in that way, because people always say, Brazilians, they only want money. I think Paulista genuinely felt really, really bad when he got injured, especially when he got injured again. And also you could see it after we beat Fener and stuff like that. He was in tears. I think he was, really feels like he owes the club something. So I think he is someone that would potentially be open to it. But then there's the rumors that he also wants to go back to Brazil to play for Corinthians. And one wonders how much time he has left in his career, right? He's 35 years old. He'll be 36 next season.
Yeah.
With the injury history and the injury issues he has, he probably doesn't have 3 years in him anymore. So if he wants to go to Corinthians, if he wants to close out his career there, yeah, this summer is probably a good time for him to go.
Yeah, makes sense.
Other than that, I can't really think of any players because Jetson doesn't make a lot of money, relatively speaking.
Every game, fit or there's no.
Masuaku, who is out of contract now, he only was on 1.3 million. I think he did he not maybe mention that the offer to Masuaku was also appearance based? I think he said something like that. And he also, about Jetson, he also said that if we can't get him out of the Benfica, if we can't negotiate anything with Benfica, that selling him does not, that makes no sense, because it's going to be hard to replace him with an equally good player. And he says the 5-year contract is ready. Right now it looks more like we will keep him for 5 more years, and he already just got an extension, by the way. I think he got like a extra 1 year or something on his contract, but he was talking about a 5-year extension for Jetson.
If the Russian clubs really want it, and sort of Benfica also realizes, okay, it's either 0 or we can get still. So I can imagine they would. There might be a deal there. Right, depending on what the Russian club will, if they really want to push forward to it. But you're right, other than that, it doesn't make sense. Who are you going to replace him with at this stage, right, with sort of the constraints, etc., maybe max 3 players, then it doesn't make sense to sell Jets or sort of replace Jetson. Especially not if we cannot get sort of a higher fee for it.
No, you're right. You're completely right. It's gonna be a very interesting summer, I think.
For sure.
Do you think that we're gonna be able to sign 3 really good players? Do you think there's the financial? Because that's also something Adalı said. Like we can bring 3 good players. Like, and he was talking about unless something like really derails us, we will bring them before the training camp starts, and that's on the 1st of July. So within the next 3 weeks, 3 transfers, essentially, right?
And the thing is, again, he said, forgive me for laughing, but he said again, if I want, I can bring players already, but I want the right players. If you want, now I can get them here tomorrow. And
that's such a Turkish thing, right? It's such a Turkish thing. And that is also, I think, I like the fact that he said, when he was defending Ole, and this is something you and me talked about, that we really wanted to see him stick his neck out for Ole, and he kind of did it, right? He didn't slam his fist on the desk or anything like that, but I do think he backed him, and he said, this is our guy. We believe in him. But this is funny because he said, it's also a cultural thing. Because the Turkish culture is shouting ridiculous stuff and
unrealistic statements,
ridiculous promises that you're never going to be able to keep.
Exactly.
How big do you see the chance of the three transfers? So a striker, a left winger, and a number 6. That's what he said. Yeah. Those 3 transfers. How big of a percentage chance do you give it that we finish all 3 of those by July 1st?
Based on the finance, I think chances are 0 because I don't think there's budget. So my counter question is, how much budget do you think that Adalı knows how much budget he has sort of communicated with his scout and with like what's the budget that we're talking about? Because I have no clue. Because if you look at the finances, there is no room for transfers, let alone double-digit transfers.
But you would imagine that they have set aside a budget for this, because I think he knows he knows he can't afford to bring transfers in August. He knows that. That is the end for him. By the qualify, even a week before the first qualifying match, if he hasn't brought in new players yet, he has about 2.5 weeks before fans start going crazy. And
I wish I had a picture of Baggio now sort of coming up in the screen, because he's waiting eagerly to be flown into Istanbul. I think this is one of the players that Alva talked about. If you want, I can get a transfer in tomorrow, because I think Baggio is. I really believe that's sort of a signed deal, but they're not announcing it because of the backlash. He got about it.
Yeah, I saw a weird tweet with a quote from Serdal Adalı earlier. Is that first I thought you said Baggio, by the way. I was like, what, Roberto Baggio?
No, Baggio.
no.
Baggio.
I had to think for a second. But, so I saw a quote from Serdal saying that Baggio will come in after the transfer, after the training camp. I was thinking to myself, what's the point? Why would you want to bring him in? Like, what is the point then? Are you going to bring him in and loan him out, or what?
That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, he says such weird stuff sometimes, man, Serdal Adalı. Like he must be on mushrooms or something. I don't know what he does.
So but the thing is with and if we sort of analyze, so let's say 3 positions, excellent players, they need to be spot on, etc. But he also said there's only room for 1 player with double digits, right?
Oh, did he say that? I didn't hear that.
Well, he didn't say it like that. But if you sort of, this is not referring to the press conference he had.
Mm-hmm. But what do you mean with double digits? So like 10 million euros as a transfer?
10 exactly.
Okay.
10 plus.
Well, I think that's reasonable, right?
That's reasonable. That's reasonable.
I would be surprised if we bring in 1 player of double digits.
Exactly.
It's not the Beşiktaş way.
Exactly. So that begs the question: the players. So let's say below 10 million, maybe 1 above 10 million. Is that then sort of enough for the type of players that you expect? Because since we can do, let's say we can only do 3, is that sort of feasible at all? Even if you have that budget, is that feasible to get the right players? And that's I just don't know of all the names that we saw.
I mean, if you look at the last seasons, the amount of money we have spent in the summer, it's roughly, I would say, between 20 and 25 million in fees. So if we would allocate that entire budget, 25 million, let's call it 25, just to be a little bit hopeful. If we would allocate 25 million to 3 players, I think you can do that. Then you can bring in, for example, a striker for 15 million, and then you can bring in, then you don't have much left, of course. Then you only have 5 left for each. Or you can bring in like a striker for 10. You can bring in a winger for 9, and then you have 6 left for a central defensive midfielder, for example. But then they also want to work on the squad depth. So what are you going to do with the squad depth? Are you going to bring in free agents only? And then free agents, the problem with them is they usually want a signing bonus. Even if they're not stars, they will probably still want 500,000 euros in signing bonus or something, So it becomes really difficult. So like you said, the budget is extremely important, and with 25 million, you're not going to accomplish much. Then you really have to go with the bare bones minimum of, okay, we're going to bring 3 players, period. And he did, there was a lot of backlash on the 3-player quote. And I did think that Adalı was kind of going back on it a little bit. He was saying 3 players before the training camp starts. We want to have...
Yeah, you're right. He backtracked on that.
Yeah. So I don't know what his original quote was. Maybe he always kind of said it like that. But so it's boiled down to, okay, we're going to bring 3 good players in early before the training camp starts so they can be ready for the European qualifiers, essentially. Yeah. And then we are going to, throughout the transfer window, we're going to add more players probably. And it will probably also depend on who is going away. Like if you can offload certain players. If Rashica goes, that frees up a spot, that frees up 2 million on the wage budget, If Musrati gets sold, that you can bring in 8 million perhaps in the transfer fee, and then you free up whatever he is making. Jean Onana, supposedly today there was a report that the Genoa coach Patrick Vieira actually wants to keep him. So
really?
I don't know how truthful it is. I don't remember the source.
I so.
but it can't have been a bullshit source, because if it was, I would have been, oh, this is bullshit. So it must have been like an Italian source or something. But let's say, Jean Onana goes, that frees up another 1.5 million on the wage budget. So of course, a lot of stuff will depend on that as well, because if players go, then budget frees up. Not necessarily transfer budget, but wage budget and all that kind of stuff, So
I hope you're right. I hope you're right in that he sort of meant three transfers before the sort of training period start, and then later on, I can imagine if there's opportunity, then he will add, regardless of the three. That I can imagine, depending on transfers going out, etc. For sure. But I really hope that will be the case, because 3 would be the bare minimum indeed. And then the budget will be sort of the all defining thing, right? If how good these players will be, I think.
And that's also why it's so difficult, right? Today there was a report that Beşiktaş are interested in Çaykur Rizespor's, I believe he's a right back, Shahin.
Shahin.
Yeah. So and supposedly Rize won 3 million for the guy. It's like 3 million.
Serious money.
Fans are losing their shit over paying that money for Mahmoud Bayo. But this is also like, if you want, like, we paid Kerem Atakan Kesgin, we paid 2 million for him from Sivas. Look where he is now. We paid 2.5 million for 50% of Emrecan Uzunhan's rights. Like, Turkish players are super expensive. That is also why I think it's so important that we stop bringing in Turkish players from these other clubs. We need to bring them. We need to educate them and bring them up in-house. Players like Kartal Kayra Yilmaz are perfect, I think. You send them out on loan for a couple of years so they get valuable experience, and then they can come back and be good enough. And that's maybe
the only way.
Yeah, exactly. We have to start doing it like that. For example, Emrecan Terzi. Is he good? Like, we have seen him now. Is he good enough for Beşiktaş? For being a starter? Probably not. But if he were playing for Hatayspor, we'd probably be interested in him right now, because he'd probably look pretty good for playing for Hatayspor. And then you're paying 2 million euros. Stop paying 2 million euros and just use your own academy products, even if they're not starter material.
Yeah, out so that they develop there, etc.
Exactly. Loan them out 2-3 seasons if you have to, but don't let them go. If you see enough talent in them so they can at least be a depth option, you should never let them go. You should just let them go out on loan and get experience, but you shouldn't, let them just leave. Like, there's been players in the past, like I've mentioned this before. I think Fatih Aksoy is a player who could have been a squad player for us. Like, why did we just use him? Also, dumb to use. I think it's kind of stupid to use a decent youth player in a trade, because youth players have a lot more value, because they whatever you sell them for is 100% profit, which is, for financial fair play, is really important. Whereas if you sell a player that you acquired, your profit is it depends on what you paid for them and blah 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 blah. So that's why Manchester United are so desperate to sell their academy players, because that is full profit, 100% profit. Yeah. Anyway, well, we have been going for 2 hours. I've kept you so long. I'm sorry, but it's been a good conversation. I think it was fun. It's a good follow-up on our video the other day. And I think this is a worthy full episode for this week for the people to watch. So at least we keep our presence even when there's no matches. So thank you for coming on again and freeing up your evening for this conversation.
No problem. My pleasure.
All right, and thank you all for watching, of course, to the Black Eagles podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified whenever we upload new videos or do our live streams. Thank you, and bye-bye.